My question for Sam Harris is, if it is his opinion as a neuroscientist that human beings always know the deepest motivation behind each one of their actions?
No, it's not, and that's a very good question. A belief in hell is actually very, very dangerous, and because just think about this. If I thought that my neighbor was torturing children in his basement, right? I would call the cops immediately, and if the cops wouldn't show up, I would kick down his door myself, right? I mean, I would be highly motivated to stop him. Now, just imagine believing that it's possible for my neighbor to espouse such a dangerous system of ideas, a heresy, that he will lead his children, and potentially he'll lead my children, to suffer in hell for eternity, right? Imagine really believing that. Well, then all of a sudden, the state, it's impossible to keep your religious beliefs private. Then your neighbor across the street is more dangerous than the guy who's just torturing kids in his basement.
Very good example, of course, is the Palestinians, right? Mm-hmm. So the Palestinians believe in suicide terrorism more than almost any other Muslim country or culture or community, right? So obviously, I think it's obvious that part of the reason that they believe that is not just because they believe the Quran even more than the other Muslims. No, it's because they find themselves in an occupation.
I've spent a lot of time thinking about security and violence and the logic of violence, the ethics of violence, and it's also just true that we have some very serviceable intuitions about who is likely to be an aggressor in any circumstance. We shouldn't, based on a politically correct desire to appear fair, deny that humans have intuitions on this. 65 years old and just got back from Tucson, and she's got all her paraphernalia, all her kitsch, and she's talking to her husband, and they're in flip-flops, and I look at them, I hear their conversation, I get the whole gestalt, and somebody better trained than me could do a better job of this, right? Attention is wasted doing a pat down on these people.
We'll stop and frisk in New York. We are going to stop 96% blacks and Latinos. Mm-hmm. Now, could you show me some numbers that show that blacks and Latinos get arrested more often than whites in New York City? Yes, you can. Is it partly because they get stopped more? Yes, that's true too. But even if I thought they were more inclined to do the crime, which I don't believe at all, but even if I thought that, I still wouldn't stop and frisk them disproportionately. Mm-hmm. The reason is you separate the races and you make the problem worse. You make it an us versus them.
What I was objecting to was the security theater of this obvious display of fairness, which is an obvious waste of time. What you're worried about with a 4-year-old is a family that would be willing to blow up a plane with their 4-year-old on it.
Right, but if you're talking about a wheelchair, well, I would actually check the wheelchairs more than anything else because it's filled with metal, so it depends, right? So it turns out anybody could be a mass killer, so it's not an efficient way of profiling. Action is much more efficient. Whereas if you were doing it on action, you'd say, this guy looks weird, his eyes are twitching, he looks crazy.
You do it on everything. You take political correctness out of the equation, right?
I'm happy to do that.
There are no illusions about what's going on when you go. I don't know if you've been to Israel, but you go through Ben Gurion Airport, and listen. We don't want the plane to blow up, and we're not going to be necessarily polite about this. And we're going to talk to you as long as we want to talk to you to find out whether we need to worry about you.
The reason they're talking is because they want to see if they can see cues and clues.
Yes,
that I have no problem with.
I want to encourage an honest conversation about the link between beliefs and behaviors, and get us to marginalize.
What conclusion do you reach?
Get us to, based on conversation.
But conversation is easy, Sam. We've had the conversation.
It's not easy. It's profoundly difficult. You should see the kinds of conversations I have with someone like Nick Kristof of the New York Times, right? Who will not admit that there's any link between religion and behavior.